Down. Oh,
There we
and
go.
we're live. We're live.
Outstanding, I see. There we go.
Outstanding. Good evening, everyone in Europe, and good afternoon for everyone else in the States. And this evening, then, or or this afternoon, or this morning, depending on where you are. I have with me Zach Howard. Uh,
Hello.
Hello. Thank you very much for taking your time to come over to my little channel. Just
No
so
worries, man. My pleasure.
this is a awesome interview here that I got for everyone planned today. Now Zach Howard is I just have to go over the official blurb. Really, he's a comic book illustrator and creator as well. You've been nominated for an Eisner Award for Best Single Issue in 2010 and a Scream Award in 2005. I know the Scream Awards. You might want to tell me more about that, actually.
I
And
think I will. I will. I'll let you go. Don't let me interrupt.
well, of course, you got a long history here to go through. Now,
Do you have
Zach,
that? You have that link for me, or am I waiting for something? Or?
you're absolutely right. Yes, I got enthusiasms. Uh, yeah,
Good.
we're gonna share the link here, both myself and Zach, to our followers. So anyone paste that in here. So to anyone wanting to drop by the channel, can do so now while we're live. And
Copy link. Okay, here we go. I'm posting on my social, and people will know. Ha! There it goes. Putting it on Twitter.
yep. Unfortunately, even with all this technology, we still have to do these things sometimes.
We're gonna make it work. All right, I'm good to go on my end.
Right. Yeah.
And can I apologize to everyone? I'm getting over a cold, so if I have the random cough, I'm gonna try to avoid coughing into a mic. But apologies in advance.
Well, you're sounding very good. I don't know if that's a voice modulator.
Oh no, it's just me trying my best. Once I get going, I'm sure I'll cough hawk a loogie in the mic or something terrible.
Yeah, you sound awesome. You sound every bit of the beard you have on you. I sound like a, I sound like a twerp. But
oh, dude, no. I don't have an interesting accent. I just have some generic nasally American accent. So
nasally, but he's awesome. Anyway,
that and coughing. So continue. What's up, man?
Well, we were at Marvel in your portfolio here in your repertoire. DC, IDW, Image, Dark Horse, Boom, and Simon and Schuster. And obviously, you're best known by you already just said to me earlier on, by your favorite title, Wil Blue Yonder, but the one you're more famous by, or maybe it's the other way around, The Cape. We will go through those. But you've also done Shaun of the Dead.
I did.
That's right. You've worked with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
Then a bit of Spider-Man and the Hulk as well.
Yep.
And it's pretty much
covers. I did, as far as DC goes, I did Detective Comics, Nightwing. What else did I do over there? I did Justice League covers for a while. All over the place. G.I. Joe, if you can think of it, I've done it, pretty much.
Yeah, whatever exists, you've done it, so that's it.
Almost.
I wouldn't need to have any more guests here.
No, cover every book. Where
did it all started? I wanted to take you back to when you start developing your interest for the comic book art, or was it some other kind of art? Were you into maybe storyboarding for movies? Were you into illustrating books, or was it comics?
It was always comics. I went into other fields, or my interest grew obviously as I grew. But I grew up, on military bases around the world as a kid, and I think it was Germany. I could get they had little spinner racks at the shopette on the military base, and you just get the 3 comics they had, and kind of really got into the Conan magazine, and which I loved, and a few odds and ends, Spider-Man, X-Men. And then I was out of it for a long time, moving around. I didn't have access to comics, and then got into it again in my teens. And, just moving around a lot, you spend a lot of time by yourself. So you end up doodling a lot and trying to recreate comics. And that's basically where my interest began. And then I didn't pick it back up until I was about 24, after a long stint of failed college, the Marines, then back in college, and I was doing my thesis, and I needed to take an illustration class, which I was pretty excited about. I was doing my thesis in figurative ceramics, so I used to do pottery and sculpt, and compete that way, and did pretty well as a fine artist competitively. Yeah, and then literally, as the last 6 months of college, I took an illustration class. Professor by the name of Tom Bionalilo, who did I think he did Aliens versus Predator, like some Dark Horse Presents thing. So he had low-level credits, but he's the first professional I'd ever really met, and in a significant manner as a young man. And he dragged me to a comic book convention. I think it was MegaCon 99 or 2000 or something. 2000, I bet. And had a blast, and my then girlfriend, now wife, I just asked her, hey, can I, attempt to try and be a professional comic book artist? And that's what I did. It took about 2.5 years, and then I landed Hellboy.
All right, yes, I've seen some of them.
So it was the Hellboy resource manual, actual really rare thing, but it was my first paid comic, and that launched my career.
Okay, and then we're talking about, which year is this?
I want to say summer of 2002-ish, fall maybe. Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing at this point, but and then I went right into 2 create our own image series, and then I got picked up for, I believe, Detective Comics. I did a book. And while they were writing a 2-issue Batman arc for me, I did a fill-in on Nightwing and Richard Dragon, extremely embarrassing book. So, and that was my initial DC career. I'll let you, I don't need to ramble, man. We can pause, add questions. What's up?
No, I was just thinking, I did watch an interview of you once at the con, I think. A small, short thing. And you didn't mention that you had given up working for the big dogs, basically, working with pre-established characters such as Spider-Man, the Hulks, and all that, and you really wanted to focus your efforts on doing create your own stuff, so brand new IPs, original IPs, and you did not elaborate that much on those short interviews, but you were very clear about that. It was not. Something I agree with very much, and is always it's kind of a breath of fresh air to hear that. And I'm not going to quote the exact words, because of course I don't remember. They were your words, but it was something like, "Nah, that's not the life for me, man."
Yeah, I'm sure I was drunk and loose, so it's cool. You don't have to remember the exact words. So, but yeah, in short, I realized very quickly, I was always told as I was coming up, I believed in the I guess the mentality, though, if you can get to a book like Batman or X-Men or something like that, that's your goal, and to stake your claim on that, and do a run on that, be known, for a person that lent their talents and personality, and put their mark on that character. When I got there, obviously I was very green and young and ignorant, but it became very disillusioned very quickly. I had an inker, although a very extremely nice guy, and we're friends to this day. Our styles were like oil and water, and we couldn't make it work, and I didn't know what to do, and I'm just trying my damnedest to meet a DC deadline for the first time in my life, while dealing with that. And you know, although my Detective Comics story, extremely happy with the story or the script. I noticed as I was doing books, my goal as a storyteller didn't quite line up with what, you know, my other creators and editors and just basically have thrust to DC. They have a business to run and IPs to protect and et cetera, and continue. And I think I quickly realized I didn't like being that cog in a wheel. And I cast no judgment on anybody that does, by no means. It was a moment of self-realization, solely for me. And I just left, and I was told my career was over by a few people, and fortunately, I landed Shaun of the Dead right after that, which wasn't quite known in the United States yet. So I caught it right at the right time and did the right indie book at the right time, and then that launched my indie career.
Well, Shaun of the Dead is by, correct me if I'm wrong, is that IDW as well?
Yes, yeah, that was my first IDW book, and that was the first script by Chris Ryle, who was adapting the screenplay. We were trying to get the book out before the DVD and hit here in the U.S., so you know, kind of catch on that to help promote, you know, the synergy of comics and movies, etc.
So, I mean, obviously, leaving the main guys at the mainstream, because obviously I classify IDW mainstream by now, but they're still focused very much on
not at the time.
Not at the time. Not at the time. That's true. Obviously, we have a leap here of a bit more than 10 years, but obviously, it was a combination then of the schedule pressure, isn't it? That is always is nonstop work, and also realizing that you probably had plenty of ideas stored, and if you really want to develop, and you needed the time to develop those ideas instead of being working for pre-established companies. And how from there do you go into start co-scripting some stories? Because obviously you are the co-creator of the Wil Blue Yonder.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go.
Is there once you're at IDW, did you stuck with them? And obviously, you have other things. You have other things there. You have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So what happens after?
Well,
you carry on. What happens? What happens after the Shaun of the Dead? Basically,
I started. The great thing about Shaun of the Dead is Chris Ryle let me basically learn how to ink while I did the damn book. So because I was pretty disillusioned with DC. There was great craftsmen, but as far as artistic sequential storytellers, I didn't think I fit in that. And that's not a judgment on anybody's skill level. It's just that we had different goals in mind as you know, visual storytellers. So I learned how to ink on Shaun of the Dead and really, you know, cut my teeth on dynamic storytelling, or at least attempting to expand my knowledge of that, or at least understanding. And I did a bunch of covers for a bunch of people. And then an artist named Sean Murphy and I developed a book called Outer Orbit, which was basically when we used to live together, and he was inking me on Vertigo books, and he even worked on Shaun the Dead with me prior to his well-deserved stardom. We did this really crass kind of is basically the good and bad, excuse me if I can talk, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but in outer space. Is a space comedy, The Odd Couple. Just our personalities turn the volume up on our individual personalities, and we kind of based a comic book on it. That did fairly well. The writer's strike in Hollywood smashed our, we were gearing up to do an animated show with it and everything like that. And that got smashed by the writer's strike. And by then I moved on to Marvel, which was my first venture. I did, go, you're about to ask a question. Apology.
Oh, I was just reminiscing. That was 2008, wasn't it? 2000.
Five-ish. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, five-ish. Yeah, a little bit early. Okay, yeah. I remember it was
So
already a bit cloudy on the writer's strike, but yes, it was earlier than 2000, right? Yes, carry on, please.
and then I just think I bounced around trying different things out, covers here, short stories there, single issue there, here or there, fill in for this or that, and did a few things for Marvel, had a lot of fun. Didn't think I was going to have fun, but immediately I noticed when I was drawing Spider-Man, it kind of brings the kid out in you, and they're kind of tongue-in-cheek stories, so I got to just be a dork and kid out for a little bit on those. The Hulk thing was okay. It was an honor to work on the Hulk. I wasn't thrilled with the project, but it doesn't involve that aspect. Doesn't involve me. And I hope to return to the Hulk one day and actually do a story I'm proud of, because he's, growing up, that was my absolute favorite character.
Awesome.
But then I think I got offered Aliens, which was a disaster for multiple reasons, which I don't want to get too dirty with. But there's some silver linings in that project as well. But it was a huge learning curve for me. Politics, people's careers, a company's objective, and my goals all coming together in not a very a conducive way, and we finished that project, and I learned a very valuable lesson on what and what not to do in my career after that project. And I was pretty disillusioned after that project. Yet again, seems to be a running theme in my career. And I think it was Exiles or some X-Men spinoff. I did a short story with Mike Raich a few years back, and he approached me after I did Aliens with an idea he had called Wil Blue Yonder that he just kind of mapped out, and we started talking about it and bouncing ideas back and forth. And he's the type of writer that we have the same goals in mind and also the same flavor of stories we want to tell as far as storytellers. So we gel perfectly, and we noticed that very quickly. In as far as you had mentioned my scripting, I don't really script. Every once in a while I'll send a line I want with Mike for Mike to do, but it's almost always him and I bouncing ideas back and forth, him going into the lab, writing something, coming back, and then I take it and I kind of rework it out on paper, add and subtract panels. And luckily he doesn't have an ego that is bothered by that stuff. And we just end up making, by the time we did issue 5 of Wil Blue Yonder, I felt like, it was the first time in my career that I felt like I really, really knew what I was doing, at least to an extent that I was confident people might enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Well, for everyone listening, Wil Blue Yonder is a 6 issues miniseries published by IDW. And I know it has obviously the name itself. It has something to do with the Air Force. I mean, it is the official song, the official tune of the Air Force, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, I think it actually, real quick, just to dovetail off of that, Mike Raich, I think he had a family relative or somebody that used to sing him that song as a kid, and that's kind of where that started.
Awesome.
So.
I mean,
and then I brought in the World War II flavor. He had just kind of biplanes. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have fun. So we started working with World War II aircrafts are so effing sexy. It's just, they're amazing. Just works of art oftentimes too. So it was a lot of fun kind of rejiggering those designs for our world. And we got to create a universe around it, which was a lot of fun.
Well, for the ones that haven't read it yet, I mean, I believe you described it yourself as a cross between Mad Max, as the basic premise of Mad Max is that obviously they're always looking out for petrol, and that kind of becomes the premise of Wil Blue Yonder, but he's set in the air basically. I mean, so obviously you already explained how the idea came about and how you guys developed it. How long it actually took you guys to finish this project? I mean, you yourself, the art. I mean, it is 6 issues, but how long exactly? How long
It
it
was
took?
about 2 full years of work, development, and now during that we were starting an entertainment company at the same time called Noble Transmission. So I'm doing logos for that. I was doing covers for IDW and hell, I don't even know who else. Whatever else companies. Because initially we didn't want to sell Wild Blue Yonder. We knew we really liked it. We didn't want to give away a big chunk of it. So we kickstarted it.
All
Made
right.
a good amount of money. I could afford about 2 issues out of the money we made for it. At the time, it was an exceptional amount of money for an indie book from two unknown, jackasses. But IDW picked it up right after that. Luckily have a good relationship with Chris Ryle. He'll always look at whatever we have. So we then went over to IDW with our money and were able to pay, our way throughout the series without taking money from IDW. Thus, they didn't get the significant ownership out of it, which ended up working out really well for us because it was a very the series did very well in print. And then we got picked up by Intel to do a new an animation with it. The technology Intel was developing eventually fizzled out, and they didn't do anything with it. But we owned all the animation, so we went and then put it through Apple, and it's now an Apple app you can download, and you can play the first chapter of Wild Blue Yonder for free. And Gerard Butler does voices. Ed Harris, Zoe Deutsch. It's an amazing cast that our director Austin Harrison put together for it. So
we're talking about a motion comic version of it. Is that correct?
Yeah. So you get to kind of play it while you're watching a movie too. So it's kind of neat. I mean, it's not like a real video game. It's just interactive. But it's parallaxed animation, so you can see around the aircraft by moving your phone and stuff like that. It's pretty neat.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I have to check.
Yeah, and we're gonna have an animation release, just a motion comic version of it released soon. I don't have a date on that yet.
I'm probably gonna drop the link for that actually when we finish off under the description of this video. We'll drop a link for that because it says it's a free download, isn't it? The issue 1.
Yeah, you can play the first 15 minutes for free, a whole first chapter, basically the first issue of the comic book.
That's it.
So
now I am screen sharing the pages. I hope everyone can see it. I don't know if you could see it on your side, but I believe everyone is watching the pages of.
Hopefully, I just see my face, which is great to look upon, but it's it's going to be the whole. I'm not seeing anything else.
Do you want to? Sorry. Go on.
Oh, I see it on the. I was on the wrong thing. Apologize. You got to remember, I'm old as the hills, so this technology thing is new for me. I'm doing my best. Bear with me, people. I'm looking at. It's all the Wild Blue Yonder. Tug dying right here. This is easily one of my favorite pages I've ever drawn in my career.
That's pretty awesome.
He decides to be the martyr. It's perfect for the world. Best death scene I've ever drawn, best character I've ever gotten to work with was Tug from Wil Blue Yonder.
Now, obviously, for everyone listening to this live stream and afterwards, once he gets saved nicely for the future, they might not be your readers. They might not actually come across yet Wil Blue Yonder. Now, I gave a little bit of the spiel in very quick words, and again, paraphrasing what you said was, what is it about? But maybe you want to give us just a short introduction to what the actual story is, and without giving away the ending or any big.
Sure.
What moments?
I'll rummage through my brain and pull up the old PR stuff I used to have to do.
It was so long ago, but maybe just remember what is it about.
Wild Blue Yonder's in my heart, man. It's the one book I need to go back and finish at some point. Mike and I have 2 more volumes. We basically are going to follow Cola's life. But to circle back, let me digress real quick. Wil Blue Yonder, it's a coming-of-age story about a young female pilot in this fantastical world where the world's so polluted. People that can try it, we created a caste system. Those that can get above the pollution, in some sort of flying vehicle, can live a little bit better lives. But the problem then is fuel expenditure, and it's and the people that live below are basically miners or traders or whatever. We don't get to, other than miners, we don't really address that in the initial series. But fuel is rapidly dwindling, and Cola is a fighter pilot and protector of the Dawn, her ship where her family lives, and it's the only known aircraft that never needs to refuel. It runs on solar energy. So basically everybody in the world's after them. So we create that scenario, if that makes sense. And then we have jetpack fighters. Everybody's favorite is Scram from the series, who's the image I'm looking at right now. He's microscopic on the tail of the craft, but there's a lot of famous shots of him axing people up and stuff. So basically, I was attracted to it initially because when Mike first pitched the initial concept to me, it felt like a Miyazaki story, and I'm a big Miyazaki fan. I love coming-of-age tales. I was looking to do a female heroine story. Everything was perfect, and then we just beat it around until we're perfectly happy with our result. Well, not perfectly happy. It's a journey, but we're pretty damn excited with how it turned out and proud.
But the source of conflict on the story, it's really a group of renegades that is trying to get as much as they can out of the skies, but also there's some conflict there to be resolved, right? Because there's this faction in the skies.
Yeah, I believe you're speaking of the judge and his, the executioner, his ship and fleet. He's the Darwinist. Now he became also another. In fact, by issue 5 or 6, we started getting fan mail where they hoped the judge won, which really, really, really made us happy, Mike and I, because our whole goal was to show sometimes good and bad, it just matters what team you end up being born on or end up with. You're just going to fight to stay alive with your family. And you don't really think of yourself as evil all the time. And hard choices are to be made. Mm-hmm. And so Mike did a brilliant job of kind of oscillating us between Cola's family and the judge's, fleet. And both situations are radically desperate. And what would you do in that situation? One, the judge is trying to save humanity the best he can. And Cola and the Dawn, they're just trying to live, So it creates an interesting conflict there where you can choose who's good and bad or who's more good and more bad. But it gets really dirty and murky. And people just try to find a way to live and be happy, which I suspect is the ultimate goal,
Well, it's a great script. That's precisely the reason why I fell in love with the story, because it really is a story where there's no clear lines between good and evil. There's no obviously there's some heroic moments. There's some heroism being done, mm-hmm. But there's the motivations of the characters are not as clear cut as standard comic books. So there's a lot of ambiguity, and you like you said, you starting getting fan mail, wanting what he could be arguably constructed as the marginal bad guy who actually mm-hmm. win. But both factions, have their points. Both factions cannot be dismissed straight away as, okay, these guys are entirely bad and these guys are entirely good. Again, for anyone that has not read the book, just to pick up something out of the mainstream, just as a little comparison. For example, Rogue One, what the rebels do in that movie. It's Wil Blue Yonder has bits of that. So the rebels are not clean cut in Rogue One. They have to do some nasty things to be able to complete their missions. Obviously, in Rogue One, the Empire is clearly the bad guy. So that's where my comparison stops. I won't dare to start discussing too much of the story of a Wil Blue Yonder, but it's just for people to get an idea that it's a very interesting story. It's a very surprising story. And obviously,
thank you.
Yeah, it is really.
I hang my hat on it, and I definitely want to come back to it and see what happens in Cola's life. Mike and I have a few more stories to tell.
Now, usually on these interviews, I go through the art. I mean, I'm not an iconoclast, but I go from what I know. I go through the art, and I do ask the artist to sometimes discuss a little bit more in that. Oh, that was a big one.
Sorry.
That's fine.
I'm doing my best. I sound like an old smoker or something like that today. So again, apologies, everyone. I'm hopped up on cold medicines, and I sound gross.
That's great. Now I went back on the pictures that I'm sharing here to actually.
I saw. Now these images, like this image right here, was extra art we made post book. You can see like clouds are outside of the frame. Yes. All these elements are in different layers in the actual file, and they're colored as a motion comic book with effects, and like the thrusters are going and the clouds part as the ship's flying. So this is an interesting view of how we had to build extra panels and expand existing panels for the actual animation, because it didn't translate one-to-one, obviously.
Well, this one just dropped here. I thought I was just pulling the actual panels from the book, but fair enough. This one is from the motion.
Yep.
How do you went around choosing your team? Because I mean, I want to go back on some of these pages because I mean, it's a very well achieved work. I mean,
pause it on that one real quick.
Yeah, no problem.
That just because apropos to your point there, that this pirate that Tug is killing here with the gunner, that's actually Nelson Daniel, my Chilean colorist. So it was a perfect timing for your question about his, the creative team.
That's right.
Nelson and I, we've worked together we're doing the sequel to The Cape right now. It's been 10 years this year. And prior to that, I didn't have many successes with colors. Here and there, I'd be colored well, but I was usually just what I felt absolutely destroyed by coloring. If it survived the inking process, the colorist was certainly going to destroy it after that. Nelson, I just found him on DeviantArt. I think he was a filmmaker prior to this, and I just asked if he wanted to color me on some G.I. Joe covers. He said sure, and right away, I believe we did like the death of Cobra Commander back in the day, which was kind of neat. They made a 9-cover, I believe, lithograph set, if I remember correctly. Anyways, Nelson and I just hit it off. We had similar sensibilities. We're both insane. We're both just unrelenting in our quest for excellence. Whether we achieve it or not, that's up to other people. But damn it, we try very hard and we work very closely. And as the years have gone by, we share almost one mind. And it's a really beautiful relationship artistically I have with Nelson. And we're eloping, and we got to let our wives know that it's over. It's just Nelson and I now.
Well, that was actually that was actually the focus of my question, was how you came about to select your colors. Obviously, you answered that already, and I want to share these pages here where you and
He's
lettering.
what I love
Um,
with him is it's a journey we go on together. It's not
mhm.
just he's just not it's not a paint by number process. He's putting a lot of thought into this, and there's a lot of communication before us before even colors, and sometimes before even ink, to make certain he can do what I'm thinking. And then I will give him notes. Hey, this is what I'm thinking. And then he always comes back with something more brilliant than I could have possibly written down for him. It's a very rare relationship, I think, for at least U.S. Comic books.
No, yeah, I mean, yeah,
We worked very intimately,
that's right.
and I couldn't be more proud to have him as my storytelling partner.
That's it. I mean, Zach's inks they're very dense, plenty of textures, and he's this both a marriage between pages and panels which are quite they look minimalistic in nature. With you create this whole environment in the sky basically, and in many panels there's these wide open spaces, usually on the top half of the panel or the top half of the page, depending on how you constructed it. And usually those panels and those pages are just sprinkled with these clouds here and there. I remember reading a couple of reviews, and there were a couple of detractors saying, well, this looks okay, but then he gets, and I was thinking, now these guys don't know what they're talking about. This is great, and without knowing what you just told us now about how you came about to choose the colorist and how the relationship went. I knew there's a lot of thinking going into these pages. It just might look something, it's just a flat kind of color coded work, but no, there's a lot of texture there in the top to complement the inks, and even the lettering work. I think is also very well balanced. Even on the pages where you have a lot of exposition, it does not compromise the integrity of the page, of the panels.
And
It's
that's the brilliance of Thompson Knox, who I don't always get to work with. He has his own career. He's a web guy, but he was probably my first and most uh, I don't know, devout fan back when I did Hellboy and everything, and suddenly became my letterer. And the great thing with having a creative personal letter like that is Mike Raich is a very wordy writer, and I love his wordiness. I don't want to lose it. It just creates this beautiful flow while you're reading it, and the characters feel very dense, and he gives you exposition without you even realizing you're reading it most of the time. It's brilliant. What Thompson's able to do then, and lettering's very underrated in comic books, embarrassingly so. It's a humongous graphic element, and it's very important to my job as a storyteller visually is to take your eyes across the page exactly where I want them to be at all times. It needs to be contiguous and unbroken. Otherwise, I fail. The great thing about having a good letterer that is they can then build upon what I draw and also create almost like a visual railroad track or a line through your page that Nelson and I put together, and the three of us together then harmonize, or at least when we successfully harmonize across a page, and your eye goes exactly where we want it to go. And if you can achieve that throughout an entire book, the reader can maintain that engrossed feel and feel like they're a voyeur inside this universe, and it's a better experience, in my opinion, as opposed to if the second a reader gets confused at any moment, they're out of the story and they're trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and you failed. You've lost a reader at that point. The spell is broken, and it's hard to regain that magic again once it's broken. So I work very hard, and I work with Nelson as an artist and Thompson as a letterer, that we have very cohesive storytelling, and hell, even in the lettering phase, the first round of lettering, we bring in Mike, and then Mike and I and Austin Harrison on this project as well. We go through and we make sure that the dialogue harmonizes with the artwork, etc. Sometimes you have to cut it down. Sometimes you need a better one-liner. Sometimes it's something in between. You know, there are countless variations, obviously, of that. And this is the, for lack of a better word, I'll use the kitschy word, synergy between all of us creates the story that the universe, it helps maintain that contiguous storytelling feel, that spell we're casting, so we can take the reader on a journey without there being an interruption. You know, and that's the beautiful thing as a storyteller, if you know you're willing to put the work into that to try and achieve it. Now achieving it's a whole nother bag of worms there, but we try hard.
Well, I mean, that's it. What else can I say? No, I got tears coming to my eyes, man.
Well, I don't want to make you cry, man.
It's
comic books are supposed to be fun.
You sure you didn't write all this before coming? It's
no,
I mean,
I'm a blowhard, man. Get used to it. This is why they throw me on a panel. Just give me like one beer and I can ramble about anything for a while.
I mean, putting aside that, obviously, you know, your ink's still the deal. The story is riveting. It's interesting, but again, it's that passion, and that synergy that you're just spelled out so clearly and so well of the team. It comes across on the pages. It's there. I mean, you know, I can assure you that you guys have succeeded. It's very well achieved work, and you feel exactly that. You feel that there is a thought process behind it. The lettering is not imposing. Is not taking you away from the story. It's not covering the art. Is in the right place. There is a hell of a flow with it. It's almost really like watching a movie on a 2D surface. You know, you
honored, because we tried to make an 80s movie. Like we wanted to basically make Mad Max if Miyazaki did it. You know, animated it in the 80s or something. And the world density, the character arcs, the coming of age, the quiet moments, the beauty and grandeur of all elements of the story, and characters and objects and locations. So I think I may have derailed you there, but I just wanted to jump in on that. By the way, the image we're looking at right now, this was done for the video game. That's Nelson Daniel. I put him in as a pirate. I believe I killed all of us in Wil Blue Yonder.
Killed the whole team.
Yeah, kill the whole team at some point. I usually sometimes do that. I think Mike Raich I killed in the original Cape. A bear ate him. So I don't know. You have to have fun with comics, man. So there's a lot of little Easter eggs like that.
I mean, as you were just pointing out in the beginning, that it's an exception to the rule. The way you guys work together in the American industry, comic industry, and that was exactly one of the feelings I had when I first opened the first few pages of Wil Blue Yonder. It didn't feel like an American comic book. You know, it was in a traditional format, but somehow I felt this feels European. You know, this feels like something.
That's the #1 comment we got, and that's why it was translated into French and then I think German. So there's a French version out through Glenat, and I don't know what the German edition. I don't know much about it. Apologies. I've never told anything.
And to be honest, I said this to myself, and now I will tell you. It's your work, either in the Wil Blue Yonder or any of the other ones, with your inks being so dense and so detailed. This is something that deserves to be published in a wide format, in a larger format, the actual book format. It should be bigger, you know, like the traditional album, the traditional European, French, Belgian album, you know, which is
hell. I want them those oversized Mobius-sized books, man. Yeah. I mean, if the European version's bigger, and then I have a IDW sketchbook that's basically the art of black and white art of Wil Blue Yonder that's still available. I don't think it's sold out. but it's got to be getting close. I think they only did one run of the sketchbook. But if people really want to see the black and white artwork, obviously they can go to my DeviantArt page, and you were able to find quite a bit. It's well documented. But I have an oversized sketchbook, so it's kind of a European-sized format book. And it has a few, behind the scenes notes in there about storytelling or how I approached a panel or thoughts on it. And just basically blown up version, full size pages of my artwork.
Oh, so, all right. Well, what is the actual size of that book? We're talking about inches here. When you say
I don't know. I'd say I don't have it with me. I apologize. I'll rip my microphone off out of my computer here. I would say it's a third bigger than a normal American comic book graphic novel. I draw my comic book pages, and apologies to the European fans. I know this is going to make them cringe, but I draw my comic book pages at 8 1/4 inches by 12. 8 1/8 inches by 12 1/4 inches. That's the size, which is about 115, or it's between 110 and 115% real size, maybe 115. I forgot. It's been too long. But
bigger than the traditional comic book page, isn't it?
Oh, excuse me.
Oh, sorry, a little bit bigger than the traditional comic book artboard, basically.
No, very much. Oh, then a printed book, yeah, a little bit bigger than a printed book, but it's way smaller than the average American comic book page.
Wow.
My stuff is it's insanely meticulously detailed and orchestrated, and the line weights and everything like that are really coordinated. So over the years, I found that size reproduces the best. Early on in my career, I went from all the way full size to just over, an actual printed size, and 115% is about what works best for me. Tightens up the pen work, but still retains line integrity.
All right. Well, I had heard about a black and white version of it. I wasn't completely aware that IDW had released that, so we'll definitely have to.
They did begrudgingly, and I think they regretted it right away.
That's awesome. I will definitely have to give another heads up to whoever is listening to purchase that, and I'll definitely have a look.
Get it right now, because it's. I don't think it's going to be around for long.
When I was thinking, when you mentioned Mobius there is a. I have no idea what it's called. And by the way, I'm already sharing pictures here of the other book.
Oh, this is a new Cape series. This is called Cape Fallen, which is the follow-up to the famous Bug Cape, which is Joe Hill's, one of Joe who's hell. He couldn't be more famous right now, I guess. Substantial writer. Him and his writing partner Jason C. Morella do this with myself and Nelson Day.
Yeah, we'll get into this in a second. I was just going.
Okay.
Out of my head, I just remember that because being here in Europe, a guy ends up in a lot of Comic Cons, which not exactly the same Comic Cons as most of the people going to. We call them more book fairs. A little bit more eyebrow, and you find a lot of graphic novel, European graphic novel in it. They're really book markets, book fairs, not Comic Cons per se. But I do remember seeing actually a very large size book, which again, I have no idea what the actual format is called, but I myself call it the Magnum size book.
Okay.
And I'm just remembering this because you quoted Mobius, and Mobius book, The Ink Owl. Actually, I've seen a print of that book in this very large format, and I don't have the dimensions of that thing, but I think it's about 1/2 meter tall.
That sounds about right, man. I mean, you could club a bear with it. It's huge.
That's right. And that is the book where your work should be printed. That is there's at least, and it's at least another 30 centimeters wide. That's it. That's what you need, man. I mean, and it's hardcover. is a beautiful piece. I mean, that's sort of book can be in the Louvre. You know, I mean, it's amazing.
Well, let me tell you this: as far as and we can put a bow on Wil Blue Yonder if you want. I we're about to get the license back from Wil Blue Yonder here. I don't know if that's next year or whatever. And as soon as we do, I have all intentions of publishing a full black and white version. I have talked to Joe Hill about doing a black and white version of the Cape, and I think, you know, the more my stupid art gets traction, and if the books do well, etc., you know, the Cape options pretty much every year. And with Joe making all these television shows, etc., there might be more versions of my books coming out. Hopefully, my goal is to make oversized black and white versions of my books, even if I sell them, you know, myself at a con or through my dealer.
Now, before we go into the Cape, which I'll have to disappoint you, but I prefer the Cape to Wil Blue Yonder. And if you ever get a Mobius size Magnum oversized print, black and white print of the Wil Blue Yonder, you have to make sure you get a double size of the Cape, because these pages right here, these are the ones that knock me out of the park. I mean, I end up on the other side of the street. I'm already 10 minutes away from the computer right now.
Honored, man. It's what you're seeing right there is insanity. I'm a crazy person, and people notice the 10-year difference between the Cape. Basically, I've radically changed as an artist. It still looks like me, but my current spectrum, and I think it's reached its zenith. Because I don't think it's like clenching a muscle. You can only hold it for so long before the muscle starts cramping and everything fails. Yeah, right. Is this level of detail and world building? Yeah. I'm only one guy, and I usually bring in a couple of, you know, young, you know, assistants to help out with a breakdown here or there, which helps a little bit, and also helps them to learn how to be a professional, you know, artist. It's a good relationship. But in all reality, I'm doing this almost all by myself, and it's an obscene amount of work. And I'm already a fairly slow artist and meticulous, etc. But that being said, my goal as an artist is to captivate you to the point where you don't want to ever turn away. And this is a philosophy where I'm not saying it's the right philosophy. It's what I've developed and wanted to see, you know, where this rabbit hole went. I think I've reached the bottom of the goddamn rabbit hole. But that being said, I get in debates often with other professionals, and cordial debates, friendly debates, but most people want to get things done as fast as possible, or just below fast as possible, with a minimal amount of effort, or the least amount of effort they can possibly put into it to get the product done realistically and still, you know, be attractive artwork and storytelling. I understand that, and I don't disparage it at all. The problem is that's ubiquitous with US comic books. It's like I always equate it to fast food. It's good as a snack every once in a while, but you don't want it to be your main meal. It'll make you fat and dumb and die early.
It's a good analogy.
and if you eat it your whole life, it's all your body knows how to process. So that's all your body will desire. But if you consume higher end things, i.e. better books that they may not come out as often, but they're more realized, and there's a lot more love and integrity in them. And I mean artistic integrity. I mean that by that. I ended up just seeing how far I could captivate a reader. Now, whether I'm successful or not, that's subjective. But just so people understand, I'm not trying to impress people with how many lines I can put on a fucking page. Apologies, I just cursed. I hope that's okay. If not, I'll refrain. But my goal is to, use lines mixed with, you know, positive and negative shapes and create a visual weight that move you across a page. It's basically, I want to take you on a journey, like maybe how a comedian does in a comedy show. You stop thinking for yourself and you're just kind of existing in this flow state and accepting the information and digesting it as it's being given to you. It's almost thinking for you. I think that's such an interesting state to be in when you're consuming a story, whether it be a video game or a novel. Sadly, not the latter there, not being employed as much nowadays. But I believe, hopefully, you get my drift. I just want to bring you into a world that you don't leave until I release you, basically. And I don't mean that in a creepy way. It may have sounded creepy. Apologies. But hopefully, am I coming across? Am I making any sense to you?
Oh, you're making perfect sense. I just
okay, good.
Just enjoy hearing. That's why
I just don't want to wander off into the woods and never be seen again and bore everybody to death. But just so people understand, my goal isn't to make a monthly comic book. I think there's a place for monthly comic books. I'm sad U.S. comics are almost exclusively monthly comic books. It makes me very sad because very seldom are the best stories being told in a monthly comic. That doesn't mean monthly comics don't have merit. You know, Ryan Otley can draw the pages off of a monthly comic book. So that's not what I'm trying to say. My goal is just different than that. You can't do that in a monthly format. It's just not possible. And another goal, I want my books to be on the shelves 20 years from now. Hell, when the aliens come and dig up the civilization that was ape civilization that was known as humans, I want them to find my book, you know, alongside Homer or whoever else. Is that lofty as hell? Yes, I get that. But to me, that's a carrot in front of the horse type of philosophy. And I think that's very important for an artist to never accept where you're at. You should always be trying to interpret what's coming or what you're feeling or what you're processing as a person now, not who you were when who you were, you know, I don't know, 2 months ago. I just think being an artist and a storyteller should be a journey just like the damn story is. You know, it should always be evolving, and it should always be achieving, and it should always be improving, and all those things. And I don't see that a lot in people. You do see it, you know, sometimes, but often the goal is to how fast can we get this crap out and cash our check, because there's not a lot of money in the industry. And if you're doing it for those reasons, I can't go along with you. I'm not going to judge you. I'm just going to go do something else.
Well, it's just not just the art being compromised and the book being compromised, but you know, that philosophy also compromises the audience, the reader. The reader becomes, you know, he's no longer a nomad trying to discover new art and new narratives. He just becomes kind of complacent to precisely that, what you described. You know, the monthly adventure of the reason repeat. And of course, there are artists which can, you know, they're really beasts in terms of speed, and they can make something gel and look great. But there's always something that is lost eventually somewhere.
I feel the same, and I'm not trying to cast judgment on anybody. This is just my shitty philosophy. I think it's important to kick everyone's ass. And that's been when I played ball in college, when I did MMA, when anything. I'm not trying to diminish anyone else, but man, you only got one shot at life. Why do the same damn thing again and again, or what anybody else has done? Let's do something new. Comic books, there's no ceiling on a comic book. Anything you can think of, you can do. So let's effing do it. Let's stop just living in the mud here. Come on, man. Let's do it. I mean, look back at all the significant events in comic books that have happened. Was it a comics that were done as quick as possible, or was it an Alan Moore book that was introduced to American audiences and blew their mind, or was it Frank Miller coming back from writing terrible RoboCop movies and wanted to tell Sin City and just he didn't care if it sold or not, but it changed. These moments that change everything were usually an artist or a band of small storytellers that didn't want to do what was already there. They had something inside them that needed out. And I think we should be nurturing that and not conformity. And I get conformity. It's industry. We're working for Disney and Marvel, etc. And they got to make underwear and lunchboxes and movie franchises on the while standing on the backbones of, the creators that originally did all that stuff. But that's just how the world is. There's no way around it. And if you want to be part of that system, you got to know that that's what it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can carve out your existence in there and be happy and hopefully free of judgment from others. But I think most comic book industry thrust in the United States is obtuse at best and it's a snake eating its own tail, and eventually there's going to be a run out of snake.
Let me just take you back just a little bit.
Have I depressed your poor viewers, listeners so far?
I lost sanity by now.
I can flip in a couple dick jokes real quick too.
All I can think of is the aliens just finding the book 5,000 years in the future and thinking this is great, but it should be double sized.
That'd be my own dimension of hell. There's some good things in aliens, but oh god, it brings up pain. But whatever. You gotta learn from things, man. Not dwell on the negativity of them. Turn it into your strength.
Yeah, conformity is one of man's worst enemies. You said it quite rightfully so. But I just want to take you back to really just give our listeners the lowdown on the Cape. Really, where did he start it, and what is it about? Because obviously the images I'm sharing here, they're wonderful, but they're obviously a little bit cryptic for the people that actually haven't read this book yet. Where did he start?
It's an archetype type book. Now, Joe Hill, for the people that live in like caves and rocks and under the ocean, one of the most famous writers in the world. He's Stephen King's son that was self-made on his own name. An amazing man, amazing story. One of his first books was a book of short stories, novels now. And one of those was a story called The Cape. I don't know how long it was. It's just a short story about this character. The character being a disillusioned young man that as a kid, and apologies, I think I've said the word disillusion about 400 times today. Apologies to everyone.
2019.
Circle back. Eric. It stars no good degenerate Eric, and he found a magic cape as a kid that could make him fly, but it led to a terrible accident. Well, later in life, when he's basically a burnout, girlfriend's dumped him, living in mom's basement, he rediscovers the magic cape. And the whole story is basically, what would you do, if you were this character and found, a magical power, this cape? What would you do with it? And it plays upon, your superhero tropes very well, because obviously it's Joe Hill. It's brilliant. And the whole story's basically it zigs when you think he's going to zag, and it does it in such a way that we got an Eisner nom for I believe it was in 2010 for best single issue. Yes. The one shot that we originally did based on the short story, scripted by Jason Ciaramella, and that was the first miniseries colored by Nelson Daniel and I. So it was a hell of a team right out of the gate. And it was at a time in my career where I was really thinking about getting out of comics and going teaching or doing some crap, getting into movies. And Chris Ryle had always said we always wanted to do a book again together. So I said I'd do one more, man. And he threw me that. And Joe and Jason are nice enough to let me. I'm a very heavy-handed storyteller, so when I get a script, I'm usually adding and subtracting panels, etc. And fortunately, they trusted me, and I was able to kind of spread my wings on the original Cape series. After the one-shot, it was so popular, by the end of the one-shot, they knew they were going to do a mini. And Joe made me a good offer, and I came back and did the mini-series. And it did extremely well. And now I'm doing the sequel to find out, because people may not have read the Cape, I can't tell you how we're doing a sequel, but this phrase, that will make more sense after you read the first story and then start reading the second. Yes. And then there's a middle one drawn by my colorist. The entire thing's done by him. It's called The Cape 69, which is Eric's father in Vietnam.
All right.
So, not to sound too convoluted.
Mm-hmm. Well, the pages I'm sharing now is from the new series.
Sequel, yeah.
And
this is where I'm at my zenith. I don't think I can maintain this style much longer, whatever the hell you want to call it, my voice as an artist. I think I've taken the texture threshold balances, which I'm obsessed with, as far as I kind of can, and still maintain my sanity and my finger strength. So I believe, sorry, everybody wants to bug me while I'm doing an interview, but I believe I've already decided what I'm doing for my next project. It's a bucket list project. I sadly can't announce it. I can tell you off air, but I'm gonna kind of go back to my roots and start reducing my style a bit and using positive and negatives. Now, that being said, most people laugh at the result because it'll look a lot like this. It's just going to be an easier style for me or voice to employ when storytelling, so I can do it in just a touch quicker fashion. If I could knock about 20% off the time it takes me to do a page, it would change my life, I think, in energy levels. I could produce books faster. I wouldn't get as destroyed by doing a series and trying to maintain this level of detail and depth, and care, I don't know. I'm going to readdress things. I'm sorry, I'm rambling about it because I don't quite know what I'm going to do yet. But when people hear the next project I'm doing, it's going to be 2 issues, and I'm going to get that chance to really break down my style and see what's most valuable and what's superfluous. And I'm looking forward to that.
Well, here at the top of the hill, and now you're looking down, see what is the best way to carry on, isn't it?
Yeah, I always say you got like a toolbox, and you're learning. You're every time you learn something and get good at something, you're putting a tool in the toolbox. And if to continue the analogy, you're building your house, your career. The more tools you have, the more intricate, awesome house you can build. The more beautiful it'll be. The more expansive it can be. You won't be limited. And in anything in life, in any professional skill, I think it's important to be unlimited, or as unlimited as possible. And at least that's my goal as an artist. So, in the story.
Obviously, it's a huge workload you have here, and you want to streamline that. It's completely understandable. But you were saying that you have now your own favorite book, which is am I true to understand it is the Cape? Obviously now you're quite satisfied with how it came out. You're at the top of the game, and this is it for you, right? This will be, like you said already, the zenith, right?
This has got to be, because I can't maintain this. I mean, this causes, I don't think this is foreign to artists, but I suffer from depression issues and isolation issues. When you're working 10 to 14 hours a day, and those are just normal days, non-deadline days or weeks. It can beat you down, and this has been 19 years. And being an indie artist, it's a little bit. It has its own struggles as far as rewards. I have a smaller fan base, which generates less money. I'm fortunate my original art sells for good money and makes me a decent income, but
it's I don't know. That you can sell, isn't it?
It's a tough balance, man. And if you put depression into that and isolation and then just life, your car breaks down, your dog gets sick, whatever, you have the flu, these are multipliers and of complications, and things can get heavy. And on top of that, if I'm spending, between 20 and 40 hours on a page, sometimes there reaches a threshold to where you're not, your gains aren't, you're just not getting it back anymore. And I think I've gone past it about 10 to 20% is what I'm saying.
Yeah, eventually gets into frustration, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's just you're complicating things only to make your life difficult, I think. So I'm excited for that. Sorry, talked over here. What's up?
No, I was asking how many issues is this new series of the Cape. So how many issues should people?
It's only 4, and it takes place within the first series. And again, I don't want to ruin the first series why it has to take place in there, but it'll make more sense later. Eric was missing for 3 days in the first story, and this is the sequel takes place right directly in the middle of the original story. Right. These 3 days, what he was doing in these 3 days. So it's kind of like it's a coming of age story almost, but just in a very dark, twisted Joe Hill way.
You mentioned how I'm not sure how much more time you have. I won't be taking that much more anyway. But you did mention how you came around to build your team in the Wil Blue Yonder. Obviously, you already mentioned your team on this one, made the writer. But are you keeping the colorist and the letterer on the Cape? Is that came around also in the same kind of process on how to get those team members as well, similar to how it was. Similar.
Sorry. Well, I can answer here. Nelson Daniels coloring it. I won't. My next project, sadly, probably won't be able to have Nelson on it, but there's a reason for that. That'll make sense once I can announce it. But other than that, Nelson colors everything I do. I don't. Yeah. In fact, even now, I wouldn't even take a Marvel cover gig if they don't let me bring Nelson with me. I mean, we're married at the hip here. We have the same vision, and together we're stronger than apart. And I'm very happy with that relationship. Letter on the Cape, it's done by IDW. Okay. Joe is nice enough. He's given the creative team some ownership of this, and especially on the sequel, I'm extremely fortunate with what Joe does for me. But overall, I don't really control the property. I have a very strong voice editorially, in the sense that, if something's not working visually, I let the editor know, and I let Jason Ciaramella know, and we readdress it, and they let me add and subtract panels as needed, etc. They basically let me be the director, which is refreshing. That being said, I don't have creative control over the story. That is Joe Hill and Jason Ciaramella. I mean, I get some input, like the idea to have the story take place in these 3 days is my idea. But after that, I just tell Jason, just give me a scene of this and this so I can have fun. And then he goes, and it's all Jason at that point. Now, my dream scenario is Mike Raich, myself, Nelson Daniel, and Thompson Knox doing books together forever. But, that's not a reality. If I want to do somebody else's IP for fun, I got to, play their game too. And I get it. It's their stuff. So there are times I depart from that creative combo, which is my ideal one. But that's just because it's my favorite. It's not because we don't absolutely kick ass on the Cape. There's a reason it's so popular. Excellent writing, excellent coloring, and the lettering's, I believe, Sean Lee's coloring. He does a great job. It's just my preferred method is when I guess arrogantly can be in control of everything, and it's not because I want to be I want to control people. It's just because I can control the final product, and I know when I have a substantial voice in a project, I have confidence it will turn out well. Where I've seen a lot of people have apathy at the wrong times and being paranoid and psychotic, I'd rather work extra hard myself to make certain that the efforts can attain the highest level of competency and excellence as possible. And Cape's a rare project where I don't control it as much, but it's still excellent, and that's because of Joe Hill and IDW's editors and Jason Sierra Morella working hard, on this character arc and everything. So I am fortunate in that even when I don't get to work with my dream team, I'm still kind of working with a dream team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand. No, I mean, my question was precisely that, was because you in Wil Blue Yonder, obviously you're very hands-on. It was your pet project, and this one you open it and you just straight away think, okay, this is more of Zach Howard. Translating, this man is controlling everything, and it's quite interesting to know that now is actually is more of a teamwork than ever before. Which was going to bring me to one other final question, which you already mentioned. You went just briefly over it. You said that in the case of Wil Blue Yonder, you guys don't actually own the IP. Is that correct? So
no, we own the IP. How it's done is once we went to IDW, we sign a contract where they own the license or they own 50% of the license and exclusivity for, X amount of years. I believe it was, I don't know what I'm allowed to say. It was the standard though. So let's say 5 years ish. They did a wonderful job. We were Amazon Book of the Month. When the hardcover came out, the hardcover sold out in 4 weeks. I'd never been part of something like that, especially an indie book like that. Been translated into 2 languages. It's been on 2 digital platforms and going to a 3rd. I'm extremely happy with how Wil Blue Yonder's turned out, and that IDW ever gave us the opportunity to do it under their banner. Whether now the thing is though, it contractually it reverts back to us, and then Noble Transmission, which is Mike Raich, myself, and Austin Harrison, can do whatever we want with it at that point, with no strings attached. Which means sequels, whatever else you can think of. Art books, posters. Now we're getting psychedelic on the screen, but so that being said, expect more Wil Blue Yonder, not only in its current form. The movie will be released. That's Austin Harrison's working on it. It's all done. It's just a movie version of the game. Basically, the game elements are taken out. It's just a motion comic book, but it's an hour and a half. Jeremy Lamb did an absolutely unbelievable, job on the soundtrack. It sounds like a movie. We have phenomenal movie stars. Gerard Butler stars in it. Like I say, Ed Harris, Zoe Deutsch, and a plethora of others that were just. Sorry for the 10 others I missed, but it's a fun little thing, and I hope people. It's on Apple apps. Just type in Wil Blue Yonder. It's free to download. And when I post this on my site with a link, I'll make certain there's links to both my books and apps and any other crap of mine you wish to have.
Yeah, well, I before after we stop broadcasting, before you go, I'll just ask you again for that link, and I'll definitely type that in once again under the description of under the title of the video. And thanks anyway for the information about the distribution publishing rights that IDW keeps. It was just a query of mine regarding that because obviously now I understand the process. So obviously you guys own the IP, but IDW has the exclusive rights to actually print and distribute the
They
actual.
license that for a bit, yeah.
So
So
it
they
works almost like a movie studio, isn't it? Where they
almost exactly, well, not exactly the same, but yeah, it's the same concept. You know, like when I option something, they, you know, company X gets exclusive rights to whatever I option for that IP for X amount of months, say 18 months. And publishing, it's usually 5 years.
Well, I was just thinking of that particular case that Marvel has with well, Marvel being Marvel Studios, and they have this issue. Well, actually, with the Incredible Hulk, since you had work at it once, and you're still eager to go back to it, where Universal owns the distribution rights for any movie starring the Incredible Hulk.
Correct.
And he's one of those uh, particular cases, one of those special cases in Hollywood where the carry on.
It gets dirty once there's billions of dollars being made. You know, that's why Marvel Studios had to make Marvel Studios. You know, and then, you know, things get murky. You know, and then with Warner Brothers, they got to protect their IPs, and things get murky. Licenses are all over. You know, the Conan license, I think, is fractured into all sorts of things, and Red Sonja is one, and Conan over at Dark Horse is one, and Marvel owns the other stuff, and it's just, things get wild, man.
Yeah, that's a place. Conan is all over the place.
Once there's money attached, all the vampires come out, and then it's just a matter of fending off the vampires while trying to get your shit done.
And I think it was a similar situation with Namor. Incredible Hulk situation with the Hulk. So again, it's that thing. Marvel owns the rights, but they cannot actually distribute a movie by themselves. They need to.
It's gross, man.
Yeah, it's gross. Right.
Yeah. Oh well, that's the world. We're apes. We're gonna do ape things.
Okay. Well, usually by the end of these things, I ask the guests if they want to talk any future projects. You just briefly went over that. Obviously, you are working or planning to work on something, but as you said, there's not much you can say at the moment about
I have to let the creator announce it, and I can't even give away the company because they'll give away the book. So just know it's a 2-issue thing. That it's a bucket list for me, and I get to work with a gigantic hero of mine, and that'll be 2 issues I'll be doing later this year, this summer. I don't know when. It's being written right now, and then after that, I don't know if I may go back to Wil Blue Yonder. I may do, you know, another bucket list project. I know I want to come back to Wil Blue Yonder. It'll be one of those 3 things.
You can probably give yourself a little rest before tackling another.
And I also have things, just real quick. Anybody interested with me? I have a prison program for prison literacy through Brink Literacy. We go into prisons and teach prisoners basically how to read and write through the power of storytelling and visualizing comic books of their lives. And we're taking the top 10 best stories, and we're doing a charity book next year for the prison women to improve prison education. And we're getting the top, not the top. I can't even say all the talent we're getting. Regardless, we're getting an excellent crew of comic book artists. It'll be up on Kickstarter. We partnered with them. We're going to be doing a giant anthology, and all the money goes to educational centers in the Colorado prison system.
Oh, correct. So very, very good.
So I do weird shit too. So
all right. Well, we'll go for now. Was there anything else you wanted to let us know, or anything else?
Oh, I don't know. I want to apologize. I was heavily drugged today on cold medicine, everyone. I'm very sorry. Try not to cough in your ear. I know I was dopey. I probably don't even remember the conversation. Hopefully, I had moments of entertainment. And for the few people that do follow my artwork, hopefully, I gave you a few nuggets of stories and insight.
That's right. That's exactly what we want, is insight from someone that has been doing this for quite some time and doing it quite well. And it was a live stream, but again, it stays recorded on YouTube, hopefully
Cool.
until the aliens find it years from now. So you can revisit it after, when you're off the cold medicine, and see how we went. I have no idea how we went. I'm looking at the same thing as you're looking, which is I'm sharing your pages, and that's the reason I have to stop sharing it, because I just look at it, and especially with the narrative on top, with the voiceover of the actual artist, I just indulge myself, and I completely forgot we were broadcasting. So I have no idea how it's looking for everyone else. Well, thank you very much anyway for coming. It was great to have you here. Great to share the work, and in a short span in his short career, since the 2000s.
Honored, man.
That's many
Thank
great
you.
books out there. Yeah, very impressive.
I'll post this on my sites, and like I say, I have a handful of fans that follow up on my crap. So honored you would even think of me. I'm a huge fan of the European format of comic books. We publish through Glenat, love Glenat. Claire Windling's one of my favorites. Kind of sucked me in through that. Obviously, Mobius. There's a whole world. That's the beauty of comic books, man. Is cultures can handle them different ways. It's the power of the medium. You can do anything you want. It's a beautiful thing.
I mean, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm not an advocate for either this or that style of graphic novels. I'm like Conan license. I'm all over the place.
Me too, man.
Comic.
Despite what I've said, I don't want people to think I'm judging anyway. I mean, from manga to, I had Mongolians send me a picture of them reading Wil Blue Yonder in their hut. That's the beautiful thing about comic books. Every culture should be expressing themselves in every subject matter. It's just beautiful what we can do with this medium, and I think we should be a little less judgmental about what people are doing with it and concentrate on celebrating what you can do with it.
Absolutely. I mean, actually, just gave me a great idea. I never actually seen a Mongolian comic book. I'm definitely up to see if they've done any.
I didn't. I'm just saying there's fans everywhere. And if there's a person that enjoys reading a comic book, I can absolutely guarantee they've thought about their own comic book in their head. And that's the beauty of it. It's a powerful, powerful form of communication and thought transfer.
Exactly. It's a lovely medium. And, like you just said, you can go all around the world and find and discover these things that in one place they do it like this, and you go to the other one and you find out they tilt the book sideways and read from right to left, and
they read it backwards, and they read it
and they have a different way to construct a panel and a different way to ink, and they will mix mediums. They will mix watercolors with oil. It's an unlimited thought process going into it. It's
words on pictures, man. You can't beat them.
Amazing art form.
Thank you, man.
Cinema, you can only do it in one way, but comics, you can do it in so many ways.
Well, you also need a huge amount of people. Comics, what I love about it, you can create a universe and show it to the world and just be one person.
Exactly. You can be yourself in a little chair in the corner of a room and crank out the magazine.
No ceiling. Sky's the limit. That's Wil Blue Yonder yourself. Get up there.
That's it. Well, thank you very much anyway. Once again, thank you very much for coming. I'm going to stop broadcasting. You can just hang out for one more minute so I can drop.
Sure. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Zach. And I do need to tell what YouTubers need to say at the end of every single video live stream. Please do subscribe and like the video so we can go up on the YouTube rating so more people get to see the videos on this channel. Obviously, there's all the other channels, but right now we don't give a crap about them. You need to like, and subscribe this one. Thank you very much to everyone, and until another time. Bye bye.
Woot.